Hello, everybody. This is Founder Laerun from Fantasy Grounds College. I am here to show you a method or a suggested way that you can track things from your character sheets. This will help you track things like weapon charges or even mundane things such as water or even charges from like a magic item or kits or whatever it is that you have on your character sheet that can be tracked. Now, one caveat about this is no, it does not dynamically update your equipment. So if you track anything in your inventory, such as how many candles you have or water or food, you still have to update this inventory sheet. But if you go to the Actions tab, I already have some of these things laid out. I have a group called Consumables, and I will show you how to create this. And then each item I wish to track is a separate listing here in this group. And each one of these has a little bubble next to it, which is the usages. So I'll get into showing you how that works. And then I'm going to actually make a couple things here to kind of show you the process. So I've already made this consumables group. And when I want to use something such as these candles, it's really a one-time use. So the main thing is to have you understand that you can actually create your own group. So I'm going to create one for this wand of missiles. I don't want to stick it in this group here. This is kind of a more like food and sundries and such. I'm going to actually make a separate one for the wand of missiles. So in his inventory right now, this is a bard. He's 3rd level, and I'm using the D&D 5e rule set to illustrate this. However, if you use any of the main core books like Pathfinder and such, those probably can do the same thing. I haven't verified the rule set's usage on how this would work, but in some cases it may not be exactly the same. It depends on the rule set. So I apologize if this doesn't apply to you or if you cannot figure out how to do this in your rule set. But I know like Pathfinder, Starfinder, any core rules that should probably work. So back to this. The equipment is just a way to track how many you have, and then also if it's equipped, and then the weights. So what we're going to do is take this a step further and make it so where you can actually check off what you use for your session. And then you'll go in and update your session accordingly. So this would be done before your next game or after, and then you can use it to kind of manage your inventory, and then you can come back later and update the actual weights. One thing that you want to make sure the item has a weight if it's applicable, and then make sure you have the quantities match at some point. So I'm going to go over to the Actions tab. Now, Fantasy Grounds already tracks your thrown or shot missile types automatically. It tracks your spell slots, but there isn't anything that really tracks your features or any of your consumable items. For example, the Bardic Inspiration is a code, but when you actually break this down, it has this set up for 10 minutes for duration. And it also has usages based off of the syntax from the actual note here. So in the notes, it says you can use as many Bardic Inspirations as you have Charisma bonus. So it says your Charisma modifier, so he has a +3. So he has 3 usages. So if we go down to the bottom of the character sheet where it says Standard Mode and we switch it to Preparation, this is where you can set how many usages you have per day and the type of replenishment, if any. So he can use 3 daily, so it's set as daily. If it's set after a long rest, then you would change this to rest. These are the consumables that I set up. They're all set to 1 time, so once you use them, they're gone. So what happens is when I go back to, let's say I'm combat and actions, if I use the items, they will actually eventually disappear, just like your spells and such. So let me go to the combat tracker, and I'm going to make sure he's on here first, just in case I need to see something else. And what I'm going to do is, like if he uses a Bardic Inspiration, I just click it, and it just comes off, and it keeps a record in the chat log too. So if you're a game master and you want to keep track of what people are using, if you come back to the next session and they still have 3 bardic inspirations and you know they used one, it will show in the chat window, and you can go back to your chat log in your campaign settings in the actual folder and pull up the chat log and say, yeah, you used it up here. Why did you replenish it? We haven't rested yet, or something like that. But nonetheless, you use this to track. So let's say he uses 2. It actually will report that he used that. And then when you use the 3rd one, this line will disappear. So that's gone now. He's used it for the day, all 3 of his usages. So as the game master, when it's time to go to a long rest, it should come back just like your spells. So if I go to menu and I go to the rest options, and if you go to short rest, it won't replenish those because it's set to daily. But if you have anything that's set to rest, which is a short rest, then they'll come back. But in this case, I'll do a long rest, so that'll reset everything. And now that I've done that, this has come back. So the bardic inspiration is back for replenishment. Now there's some items such as water and food and such that are not really daily replenishment. So they're not a magic item or a feature. So in the preparation mode, I have these set to once. So when you use these, they disappear off your sheet until you can go to a store or trade or find some loot. So if you change this back to combat and actions, let's say you want to use up your oil flask, so you use one day, and the same night you have to end up lighting it again. So you click on that and it disappears. It won't come back even if you rest. However, if you go and you replenish or you get more, you just go to the standard mode and uncheck these. And if you get more than 1 oil flask, you can go to preparation mode and just change this to 3 now. But then you'd also, at the end of, or beginning of the session, you would change your actual weight, which is what this is mainly tracking. So, and items. So if you go to the actual oil, the lamp oil, it will track here. So you just change this to 3. And that way it actually changes the weight. So those aren't dynamically linked, unfortunately, but it is a convenient way to track things as you're playing. And then after your session or before your next session, you can update this stuff. So that's just one way to track things. I think it's a little bit more convenient for the game master and the player instead of going back and forth and trying to keep track of that. Just check them off as you go, and then when the session's over or when you make it to a store or a place you can trade, you can update it. So I'm going to actually show you how this is done. So right now I'm in standard mode and I'm in the group settings. So I'm going to create a new group. So these are called power groups. It doesn't necessarily mean they're powers, but that's just a generic standard name for it. So I'm going to create one for the healer's kit. So the healer's kit is a leather pouch, and I have it in the inventory. So it's there. The weight of the healer's kit is in there. But I want to add it to my consumables here. So I'm going to click the edit button, which is on the very bottom right corner. And then I'm going to go up to the consumables area and either click this plus button or right click and create a new item. So now, as you can see, it kind of went to its own place. It doesn't have a category. So I'm going to copy and paste the name of the category. And I'll paste it in here. And now it'll actually be in the correct area. Then I'm going to call it Healer's Kit. And now I'm going to define it. So I'll get out of the edit mode. It says that I have 10 usages. So rather than just saying I have one healer's kit with 10 usages, I'm just going to put the usages on here. So you can use it 10 times as an action. So you can use this to stabilize somebody without using a wisdom or a medicine check. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to the bottom down here, the mode, to preparation. And I'm going to change this to 10. And then change it to once. So now when I go into combat mode and the actions, it should have the 10 usages, which it does. So there's my healer's kit usages. Now, if you click on this link, there's no description here. So what I would do if you're so inclined is I'm going to unlock the description. I'm going to copy and paste it. So when the player uses this, or when you need to look at it, you don't have to dig the item up. It'll be really convenient to have the description right here. So I'm going to copy and paste this data. And I just pasted it in there. And then I'm going to lock it. And there we go. So this is how you basically make sure that you have something to look at when you're creating these items. So now, as you can see, I don't have descriptions on a lot of these. So I'd probably go in and do that to make it more convenient for me and my players. But for the things that actually have mechanical value, I would definitely make sure that I have a description. So now I have the description of whatever the item is. So you can't drag items into here, unfortunately. You have to edit and make your own kind of entry. So I just copied and pasted the data and put it in here. So now let's talk about this wand of magic missiles. So right now, I don't think it's in his inventory. No, he doesn't have the wand yet. So let me drag that over. Let's say he won this or he purchased it. So now it just says wand down here. So if I open this up as a player, I don't get to see all this fancy stuff because it's not identified. However, once I identify it, then all these other fields become available to me as a player. So this doesn't really solve the tracking problems or the the actual usage of it. This just puts it in your inventory and the weight and the description. Now I need to go to the Actions tab, and I'm going to add a group to handle this wand of missiles. So this is kind of a way to track charges and a way to kind of set up the powers for it. So I'm going to go ahead and click the Edit list on the very bottom right corner. And I'm going to click on the star, which is Add Power. And as you can see, it adds it up here to the top by default. I'm going to call this probably magic item or magic items. So I have a magic item here that's a healing potion, but that's more of a consumable type item, so I put it in there, but I could put it in the magic items area. And now that I've clicked on the cell, it actually updates the name of this group, and it makes its own category. So I'm just going to type Wand of Magic Missiles for the description. And now that I've clicked away, it made a new line, and it's basically getting ready to be set up for whatever I need it for. Now this description is important to what you're going to be doing in this particular case. So right off the bat, it has the Wand of Missiles image, which is nice to have, but I don't need that necessarily. And then it has the actual spell. So if you want to use this action as an action and not have to do it manually or leave it up to the DM, you can drag and drop this spell into this group. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So that's the damage, and it also put the entry in here. And what's nice about that is I'm going to get out of the edit mode. And then if you go to the Wand of Missiles, you don't have the description, but you already have the damage set up for you. So it's 1d4 plus 1 force damage. So it took some of the information from the description of the spell and put it in there. So now you have the damage function. Now I want to add the description. So again, I would probably take a copy of paste of this data here, or at the very minimum, I would at least link the spell. So now you have a link to the spell. And then it says it has 7 charges. So while you're holding it, you can use an action to expend one or more of its charges to cast a magic missile spell. So you can cast at higher levels with it, basically. The wand regains 1d6 plus 1 expended charges daily at dawn. So daily already says long rest. So at the minimum, it's going to regain 2. So I'm going to go and right click, or excuse me, I'm going to change this bottom one to on the character sheet, to preparation. And I'm going to put 2 here. And you can change this based off what you roll. And then I'm going to change it to daily. And that way, when I rest, no matter what, it's going to have 2. But then I have to roll a d6 plus 1. So I'm going to go ahead and roll a d6, but I'm going to add a plus 1 modifier. So in the modifier box, I just added a 1. And as a player, I would drag and drop this in here. And I guess I get a total of 5 charges back. So in the preparation mode, I would change that to 5. And that's so when I go back to my combat mode and actions, now I can keep track of the charges and how many I've used for this particular item. So this keeps track of the usages, and you have the spell at your disposal to use for damage purposes. And then if you want to cast it, if you use more charges, you're basically going to add another die. So you can either create different variations of this with different numbers of die rolls, or if you want, you can just drag and drop. So you just click the damage and drag it to your target, right click, which adds the additional dice, and then drop it on your enemy. And then in this case, it did 6 wounds. So that's just a way to kind of automate some of it. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's a good way to track this. So hopefully you guys, this will become useful for whatever it is that you're doing in your game. Again, I'm using the 5e rule set, but I'm pretty sure you can do most of this in the core rule sets. If you're using Pathfinder or one of the other similar game systems, it should be fairly the same. I wouldn't say exactly. And then if you're using like Call of Cthulhu or Conan or something, I'm not sure if it'll work for those, but that'll be up to you to discover that. But this is the 5e rule set. I apologize if this doesn't apply to you. So the Wand of Missiles is kind of dealt with. Again, I just made a new group, and then I added the properties that I needed for this item. Now, the picture I didn't care about. I didn't add that. And if you can't edit this text, which in this case I can't, I'm going to add that to the description of this particular item. So I'm going to have to make a copy of this in the item section. So right now it's kind of copyright protected. There's no way to edit it. But if I drag and drop it back into this list, and I go to Wand of Missile, as you can see, there's one here that's not attached to anything. So I just went in and I drug another copy of it in here. So you just take this link and drag it back in, and there's another copy. So when you have a copy, you can now edit it. So now I have the original, and now I have a copy of it. So now I can unlock it, and I can take this information and paste it. So I'm going to first hit Control A, which is Control All, which will select all the text. And then Control C, which is copy. And now I'm going to go to the item over here, to the description, probably just the Wand of Missiles thing here. Open that up. And now I pasted it in here. So the image I'm not going to use. I don't really care about the image right now. This is a link, so I could take the spell itself and link it here. Let's see. So if you have the spell like this here on the spell, or on the group here on the power, you can drag and drop it right on here. I'm going to do a little bit of formatting. So there's the header. There's the data that you need for usage. There you go. I'm going to lock it. And now when I pull up the item in my Actions tab, I have something to go on. Otherwise, you're going to be going to your inventory, and you'll just pull up the description from there. So either way, I kind of like to have everything in one spot so I don't have to keep flipping through all these different tabs. Hey, George. How's it going? All right, so 18 of you. Cool. Any questions? This was just a quick way to track things in your inventory, especially if you're using the 5e rule set. This is what this is made in. It will probably work in Pathfinder and such, but I think that mainly the core rules can do this sort of functionality. So as you can see, I have other things tracked on here, like I have his coding for his Jack of all trades, Song of Rest, Combat Inspiration, and Bardic Inspiration. So these are all things that we can track in the game. And so if I wanted to click on Bardic Jack of all trades, I click on the effect, and it's going to add the +1 to initiative, because you get that for you get a bonus of +1 for Jack of all trades. So that will, it's half of your proficiency bonus. So his proficiency is 2. So until that reaches 3 or 4, it won't go up until he's later in levels. But nonetheless, it's already kind of baked in now. So these are things that you have to set up manually. These are actually class features. It's coding for that. But I showed you how to make the magic item coding for this magic missile, the wand of missiles. If you don't want to use the spell, you can right-click, add action, and you can actually add the damage. And if it has a saving throw or an effect, you can make your own. You don't have to use the actual spell, but it's best if you do, because it's very similar to a magic missile. So that's basically it. So here's my description now. This is the magic missile description, and the description of the magic item is the next entry. And this is linked to here. So technically, you only need the description, because everything you need is right here. So that's pretty much all I had for you. If there's anyone that has any questions about tracking your items on your character sheets, like I said, I'm not sure how it works on other rule sets. It all depends on how they are built and how they are coded and set up and developed. So I don't have much control over that. So anyhow, I think that's it. This was, again, how to set up things on your Actions tab, provided it makes sense. So this is a lot of work to get to admin work. Are there plans that... I don't think so, because you're only... this is a tabletop tool. Any sort of extra automation that we get out of it is kind of on us. Wizards of the Coast doesn't provide the coding or any of the other things needed. So if you need something, you will have to build it yourself, more than likely. It is a lot of work up front, but once you understand how to use the tool, which has taken me 3.5 years to really get a good handle on anything, that's where you're going to be. So you need to use the tool, watch tutorials, and find out on your own how this stuff works. It's important that you remember that this is still a tabletop-like tool. It's not a video game, and not everything can be automated. So there are some limitations to a database. So Fantasy Grounds is basically just a big database. However, there has been workarounds, so that's kind of what this is a workaround to these types of problems. Now, there may be in the future. I'm not saying they won't do it, but I doubt it. And everything is based on the core rules. So if it's not in the core rules, more than likely, it's not going to be in the extended rule. So it have to be something that's worth their time to code and worth their time to maintain and keep up to date. So they don't have a lot of developers. So that's why the community ends up doing a lot of things before they do. They do integrate good things and good ideas when they can, but they don't necessarily have the time to do all these little targeted and very specific tasks on the character sheets or in the actual rule set. So we are kind of lucky, and 5th edition has all this automation because most of the rule sets are not as further along as the 5th edition. So if you go to a different rule set, you're going to have even less. And you have to use the games and the rule sets as you would around a table. You don't have anything at your table that automates this stuff. So it's one of those things where they have to weigh what the community needs and what the community wants. And there's two different things. So they mostly focus on the needs and the functionality as opposed to the creature features and the specifics. So anyways, I'm going to let you guys go. I'm rambling too long. Again, this is Founder Laerun and it's Fantasy Grounds College. This will be up on the video on demand on our YouTube channel, and it will also be available on Twitch.